The sun dipped behind the baobab trees, casting long shadows over the small village of Mbale. The sound of children playing in the distance filled the air, but in a dimly lit hut at the far end of the village, 13-year-old Abeni sat alone, tracing patterns on the dusty floor with her fingers. Her parents, Chief Okon and Mama Fadeke, had left for the city a year ago in search of a better life. They had promised to send for her soon, but the months stretched into endless days, and their letters became fewer. Now, she was left in the care of her frail grandmother, who could barely provide food, let alone the warmth of parental love. Each morning, Abeni watched other children walk to school in their neat uniforms while she stayed behind, forced to fetch water, sweep the compound, and cook for her aging grandmother. She longed for companionship, for someone to share her thoughts and dreams. But loneliness was her only friend. One day, after finishing her chores, she wandered through the village, her bare feet brushing against the warm earth. At the market square, she saw a group of older girls laughing and dancing under a tree. Their clothes were bright, their jewelry jingled as they moved, and their eyes sparkled with something Abeni had never known, freedom. "Hey, little girl, what's your name?" one of them called, her voice teasing. "Abeni," she answered shyly. The girl, who called herself Sade, smirked. "You look lost. Come sit with us." And so Abeni sat. It was the first time in a long time that someone had invited her to be part of something. As the evening stretched on, she listened to their stories, of sneaking into the city, of men who gave them gifts, of nights filled with laughter and dancing. Abeni's heart pounded. The village was dull, empty, but the world they spoke of, it sounded like a dream. That night, as she lay on her thin mattress, her grandmother's soft snores filling the hut, Abeni stared at the ceiling. The seed had been planted. The first step towards the street's embrace had been taken. Abeni's visits to the market square became frequent. Sade and the other girls welcomed her, teaching her their ways. They painted her lips red with crushed berries, wrapped her in vibrant fabrics stolen from traders, and told her she was beautiful. "You can have anything you want, Abeni," Sade whispered one evening. "You just have to be bold enough to take it." At first, it was harmless, dancing in the village during moonlit nights, sneaking bits of fruit from careless vendors. But soon the stakes grew higher. One evening, Sade led her beyond the market square, past the familiar huts, to a dusty road that led toward the city. "Come with us," she urged. "The real fun is in town." Abeni hesitated. Her grandmother's frail face flashed in her mind, but so did the memory of her parents leaving, forgetting about her. With one last glance at her home, she stepped onto the road. She didn't know it yet, but this was the night that would change her life forever. The journey to the city was filled with excitement. Abeni had never left the village before, and the mere thought of seeing the world beyond Mbale sent shivers of anticipation through her. The older girls walked with confidence, their laughter echoing through the night as they made their way toward the city lights. When they arrived at the outskirts, Abeni's eyes widened. The city was nothing like the quiet, slow-paced village she knew. The streets were alive, men and women shouting, bright lights flickering, and loud music booming from hidden corners. "This is where we make money," Sade said, leading Abeni toward a dimly lit alley. A group of older men sat under a wooden shade, their eyes scanning the girls with interest. Abeni's stomach tightened. "Don't be scared," Sade whispered. "Just smile. They love that." Abeni hesitated. Something felt wrong. But then she remembered. Her parents had left her, forgotten her. If she was to survive, she had to be strong. She smiled. That night, she learned that the city was not as beautiful as she had imagined. She saw desperation in the eyes of girls older than her, saw the way men looked at them, not with kindness, but with hunger. But she also saw something else, money. And for the first time in her life, she had some of her own. Chapter 4. The Price of Freedom. Weeks passed and Abeni adapted to her new life. The girl who once fetched water and cooked for her grandmother was gone. In her place was someone new, someone who wore bright clothes, someone who knew how to use her charm, someone who had learned the art of survival. She no longer cared about school, about the life she had left behind. The money she made allowed her to eat what she wanted, to dress like the city girls she once admired from afar. But there were nights when she lay awake in a cheap rented room, her heart heavy with something she couldn't name. Regret? Fear? Loneliness? She pushed the thoughts away. There was no going back now. One day she saw a familiar face in the city, a childhood friend from Mbale Bayo. He was shocked to see her. "Abeni, what are you doing here?" She laughed, flicking her braided hair over her shoulder. "I live here now." His eyes darkened. "This isn't you. Come home." But home was a place she had erased from her mind. Chapter 5: The Fall. The more Abeni embraced the city, the deeper she sank into its darkness. The money was never enough. The men grew more demanding, and the streets, once thrilling, became dangerous. One evening, a deal went wrong. A client refused to pay, raising his hand to strike her when she protested. Abeni fought back, but he was stronger. By the time she escaped, her face was bruised, her body aching. Sade found her curled up in an alley. "This is the life, Abeni. You either get stronger or you get swallowed." Abeni wanted to be strong, but she was tired. She thought of her parents. Did they ever think of her? Did they even care? One evening, as Abeni walked through the city streets, she overheard a conversation. "Chief Okon is looking for his daughter," an elderly woman said. "He and his wife returned from the city. They are desperate to find her." Abeni's heart stopped. Her parents were back? After all this time? For the first time in years, a tear slipped down her cheek. Chapter 7: The Road Back. Abeni stood at the edge of Mbale, staring at the village she had abandoned. The sun was setting, bathing everything in a golden glow. It looked the same, yet everything felt different. She had changed. The moment she stepped into the compound, her grandmother cried out, rushing to embrace her. "My child, I thought I lost you." But when her parents saw her, their faces were filled not with joy but with sorrow. "What have you become, Abeni?" her father whispered. The words cut deeper than any wound. Chapter 8: The Weight of Regret. Abeni's return was not easy. The village whispered. The elders frowned. She felt like a stranger in her own home. Her parents tried to fix things, enrolled her in school, kept her close, but the damage had been done. Abeni was not the same girl they had left behind. One evening, she asked her mother, "Why did you leave me?" Mama Fadeke wept. "We thought we were doing what was best for you, but we were wrong." But apologies could not undo the past. Chapter 9: Redemption's Path. Abeni did not want pity. She wanted a future. She threw herself into school, determined to prove that she was more than the girl the village whispered about. It was not easy. The stares, the judgment, the weight of her past, it all threatened to pull her back. But she fought. She worked harder than anyone, determined to rewrite her story. Years passed. Abeni became a woman of strength, a teacher who mentored young girls in Mbale, ensuring that no child felt abandoned the way she once had. Her parents, once filled with regret, watched with pride. They had learned their lesson. The price of neglect was too high. And Abeni? She had found her way back, not to who she once was, but to someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who had survived.